The station hung in the darkness like a silver ring around a dying star. Terminus Point was the largest structure ever built by the combined species of the Galactic Council. Its corridors stretched for hundreds of miles, connecting meeting halls, living quarters, and diplomatic chambers where 17 different species tried to keep peace across the galaxy. Today, those corridors buzzed with tension. Minho walked slowly through the main hall, his shoes clicking softly on the polished floor. He was young for an ambassador, only 37 years old, with a face that most people forgot 5 minutes after meeting him. That was exactly how he liked it. He wore a simple gray suit, carried a single datapad, and smiled at everyone he passed. The alien delegates stared at him as he walked by. Some whispered to their aides. Others looked away quickly, as if embarrassed. Minho knew what they were thinking. They thought he was walking to his own execution. The main council chamber was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into shadows high above, and the curved walls held viewing screens that showed star maps and treaty documents. 17 seats formed a circle around the central floor, each one designed for a different species. Some were chairs. Some were standing platforms. One was filled with water for the Aquarian delegate. Minho took his place in the center. The human position. The accused position. Chairman Thexis stood from his seat. He was tall, nearly 12 feet high, made entirely of crystal that caught and reflected the light. When he moved, his body chimed like broken glass. He had led the Galactic Council for 70 years, and his voice carried the weight of that authority. Ambassador Minho of Earth, Thexis began, his voice echoing through the chamber. We gather today to address the crisis that your species has created. Minho nodded politely and waited. Thexis activated the main display screen. Images appeared showing human colony ships, human settlements, human mining operations spreading across space like a virus. The chairman's crystalline hand swept through the air, highlighting sector after sector. In the past 50 years, humanity has established colonies on 43 worlds. You have expanded into territories that other species claimed first. You have ignored the boundaries that have kept peace in this galaxy for over 3,000 years. You have refused every request to slow your growth. The other delegates murmured in agreement. The Vrin Commerce Minister, a being covered in purple fur with 6 eyes, nodded vigorously. The Corvian military commander clicked his mandibles in what Minho had learned was a sign of approval. Thexis continued. Humanity grows too fast. You breed too quickly. You consume resources without thought for others. You are like locusts, stripping each world bare before moving to the next. Minho said nothing. He simply took notes on his datapad, his expression calm and interested, as if Thexis was giving a university lecture instead of listing crimes. We have tried diplomacy, Thexis said. We have tried trade restrictions. We have tried warnings. Humanity ignores us all. So today, the Galactic Council presents humanity with a final choice. The chairman pulled up a document. It filled the screens around the chamber with dense text and legal language. Minho recognized it immediately. They had been working on this ultimatum for 6 months. He had read leaked drafts. He knew every word before Thexis spoke them. Earth will accept population controls, Thexis declared. No human world may exceed 5 billion residents. Humanity will abandon 12 of your 15 colony worlds within 1 standard year. The remaining 3 colonies will be monitored by council inspectors. All future human expansion must be approved by this council before any action is taken. The Vrin minister added her own conditions. Human ships will be limited in number and size. No vessel larger than a standard transport. No fleet may contain more than 10 ships. All human trade routes must be registered with the council and may be suspended at any time. The Corvian commander spoke next, his translator converting his clicks and chirps into standard galactic speech. Human military forces will be reduced by 70%. All weapons research will be overseen by Council observers. Earth's defense grid will be disabled and replaced with Council-approved systems. One by one, each delegate added their demands. Hours passed. The list grew longer and longer. Humanity would become a supervised species, limited in every way, reduced to a tiny corner of space under constant watch. Finally, after 3 hours, Thexus finished. These are our terms. You have 2 choices, Ambassador Minho. Accept these conditions, or face complete isolation. Every species in this council will cease all trade with humanity. Our combined fleet will enforce a quarantine around Earth and your colonies. You will be alone in the universe until you learn to follow the rules. The chamber fell silent. Every eye, every sensor, every alien consciousness focused on the human standing in the center of the room. Minho looked up from his datapad. He had been taking notes the entire time, his fingers moving steadily across the screen. Now he stopped. He looked at Texas. He looked at each delegate in turn. Then he smiled. It was a gentle smile, warm and genuine. The kind of smile someone might give a friend who just told a good joke. Thank you, Chairman Texas, Minho said. His voice was soft, respectful. Thank you to all the delegates for explaining these terms so clearly. I appreciate the time and effort that went into this document. Texas's crystalline body flickered with confusion. Do you accept? Yes, Minho said simply. He tapped his datapad. I'm transmitting my signature to the Council servers now. Earth accepts all terms as presented. We will begin implementation immediately. The chamber exploded with shocked whispers. Delegates turned to each other in confusion. This was not how humans were supposed to react. Humans argued. Humans fought. Humans never simply gave up. The Vryn minister leaned forward, her 6 eyes narrowing. Just like that? No negotiation? No demands of your own? The terms are clear and fair, Minho said. He was still smiling that pleasant, forgettable smile. The Council has legitimate concerns about human expansion. We understand. We will comply. Texas seemed uncertain for the first time in decades. You request. Nothing? Just one small thing, Minho said. We'll need 30 days to coordinate the withdrawal. Recalling ships, evacuating colonies, organizing the population controls. It's a complex operation. 30 days should be sufficient. Granted, Texas said automatically. Then he paused, as if surprised by his own quick agreement. You understand that this treaty is binding? Once signed, humanity cannot expand beyond the 3 permitted colonies without Council approval. I understand completely, Minho assured him. Earth will honor every word of this agreement. The signing ceremony was brief. Minho's signature appeared on the official document, followed by Texas's mark and the seals of all 17 Council species. It was done. Humanity had been contained. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, many of them seemed confused. They had prepared for hours of angry negotiation. Some had expected humanity to choose isolation and conflict instead. The quick surrender felt wrong somehow, but they couldn't explain why. The Vryn minister stopped beside her aide as they left. Something is not right, she whispered. Humans don't give up like this. Her aide, a younger Vryn with bright green fur, shrugged. Perhaps they finally learned their place. Perhaps, the minister said. But she didn't believe it. In the chamber, Minho gathered his things slowly. He carefully saved all his notes. He checked the treaty one more time, reading certain sections with particular attention. Then he closed his datapad and walked out. In the corridor, he passed Texas, who had been waiting. Ambassador, the chairman said. I must admit, I expected more resistance. Minho looked up at the towering crystal being. His smile never wavered. Why resist when you're offering us exactly what we need? Before Thexus could ask what he meant, Minho bowed politely and continued walking. Behind him, the chairman stood in the corridor, uncertain and troubled by words he didn't understand. The news reached Earth's colonies within hours. Across 15 worlds, humans gathered around screens to hear their fate. 12 colonies would be abandoned. Only 3 would remain. The Galactic Council had spoken, and Earth had accepted. Governor Taiyang stood on the balcony of his office on New Seoul, watching the twin suns set over the colony's capital city. Below him, 20 million people lived in the city he had helped build. In the valleys beyond, farms stretched to the horizon. Mines in the mountains pulled rare minerals from the ground. This was a living, breathing world, and he had 30 days to evacuate it. His assistant, a young woman named Yoonji, brought him the official message. "The transport schedules are coming in from Earth Command," she said quietly. "First ships arrive in 4 days." Taeyang took the datapad and scrolled through the numbers. Hundreds of ships, thousands of trips, millions of people being moved like cargo. Have the other governors responded? Governor Haijin from New Harmony is already organizing her evacuation. Governor Dane from Frontier Station says his people are angry, but will comply. Yoonji hesitated. Governor Taeyang, the people are asking questions. They want to know why we're just giving up. Tell them we follow Earth's orders, Taeyang said. He looked at his assistant carefully. And tell them to pack everything they can carry. Everything that matters. Something in his voice made Yoonji look at him sharply. But before she could ask, he had turned back to watch the sunset. 4 days later, the first ships arrived. They were massive colony transports, each one capable of carrying 50,000 people and all their possessions. The ships landed in designated zones around New Seoul, their engines kicking up dust storms that covered the city in red clouds. Taeyang watched from the command center as families boarded the ships. Children carried toys. Parents carried photo albums and memory drives. Some people cried. Others looked angry. But everyone moved in an orderly fashion, following the evacuation plan. What the council observers didn't notice was that the ships were carrying more than just people. Hidden in cargo, holds beneath the passenger decks were manufacturing machines, medical equipment, agricultural systems, and data servers containing years of research. The colonists took everything that wasn't bolted down, and quite a few things that were. The council had said to evacuate the colonies. They hadn't said to leave the infrastructure behind. On Terminus Point, Minho attended his first session as Earth's permanent representative to the Galactic Council. It was a minor session, dealing with trade routes and shipping regulations. Boring work that most ambassadors sent assistants to handle. But Minho attended personally, sitting quietly in the human seat, taking notes and nodding along with every decision. Thexus noticed. Ambassador Minho, this session is open to junior delegates. You need not attend personally. I want to understand how the council operates, Minho replied with his usual smile. Earth has much to learn from your experience and wisdom. The Vrin Commerce Minister watched this exchange with growing suspicion. She had seen defeated species before. They showed resentment in small ways. A sharp word here. A delay there. Little rebellions that let them feel they still had power. Minho showed nothing. No anger, no bitterness. Just endless, patient cooperation. It made her nervous. Back on New Seoul, the last transport lifted off on day 28. Governor Taeyang watched from the ship's bridge as his colony disappeared below. The city still had power. The farms still had automated systems running. From orbit, New Seoul looked alive. But when council inspectors arrived 2 days later, they found the planet empty. Not a single human remained. The cities were ghost towns. The farms ran unattended. It was exactly what the treaty required. The inspectors sent their report to Thexus. Colony evacuation complete. All human presence removed as ordered. Similar reports came in from the other 11 abandoned colonies. Every world emptied on schedule. Every facility left intact but vacant. The council delegates congratulated themselves on humanity's swift compliance. Only the Vryn minister remained troubled. She pulled up the shipping records and started tracking the colony ships. According to the data, they should have been making dozens of trips between the colonies and Earth, ferrying people back to their home world. But the numbers didn't add up. The ships made one trip from each colony. Then they disappeared from tracking. She brought her concerns to Thexus in a private meeting. Chairman, something is wrong with the evacuation records. Thexus's crystal body chimed softly. The inspectors confirm all colonies are empty. The treaty is being followed. Yes, but where did the people go? The transport ships aren't returning to Earth. I've checked the traffic around Earth's solar system. There's not enough shipping activity to account for tens of millions of colonists. Perhaps they're using slower routes to avoid congestion, Thexus suggested. For 3 months? The Vryn minister pulled up star charts. Chairman, I've traced every registered human vessel. Most of them file their routes as required. But 67 colony transports have simply vanished. Their last known positions are in deep space, then nothing. Thexus was quiet for a long moment. Could they have been destroyed? No debris, no distress signals. They just disappear. Meanwhile, Minho's assistant Yuna was making waves in the trade division. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a gift for finding loopholes. The council had imposed strict trade restrictions on humanity, limiting what they could buy and sell. Yuna followed every rule perfectly. But she also discovered that the restrictions only applied to direct trade between humans and other species. They said nothing about humans trading with independent corporations, which then traded with other species. Within weeks, human goods were flowing through the galaxy again, just with extra steps. When the council tried to close this loophole, Yuna apologized profusely and stopped immediately. Then she found another loophole, and another. Each time she was caught, she bowed and complied. Each time she complied, she had a new workaround ready. The Corvian military commander complained to Thexus. The humans are making a mockery of our restrictions. They're following the rules, Thexus pointed out. We cannot punish them for our own unclear language. Then make the language clearer. But every time the council tried to write new restrictions, Minho or Yuna would request clarification on hundreds of minor points. The negotiations would drag on for weeks. By the time new rules were finalized, the original loophole didn't matter anymore because the market had changed. The Vryn minister watched all of this with growing certainty that humanity was playing a game that council didn't understand. She started investigating more carefully. She pulled up records of human resource purchases over the past year. Vast amounts of materials had been bought through the trade loopholes Yuna created. Metals, plastics, electronic components. Enough to build a small fleet, but there was no fleet around. Earth, the 3 permitted colonies, had only basic defensive ships. So where were the materials going? She expanded her search, looking at sensor readings from the edge of council space. There were always some ghost readings out there. Cosmic radiation and debris that created false positives on scanners. Every species ignored them, but when she looked at the pattern over the past 6 months, the ghost readings had increased. Specifically in certain sectors along the edge of known space, the Vryn minister created a map, marking every disappearing colony ship, every suspicious sensor reading, every unusual resource purchase. A pattern emerged. All the data points led away from council space, toward the great void between galaxies. She showed her findings to Thexis. They're building something out there, beyond our borders. Thexis studied the map. This is all speculation. Ghost readings and missing ships could have many explanations. Then let me take a science vessel to investigate, the minister said. Let me see what's really happening out there. That would be a waste of resources chasing shadows, Thexis replied. But his crystal body flickered with uncertainty. In his office on Terminus Point, Minho sat with Yuna, reviewing the latest trade reports. She had just successfully redirected a shipment of industrial fabricators through 4 different corporations before they reached their final destination. The Vryn minister is getting suspicious, Yuna said. She's asking questions about the missing ships. Minho nodded. She's smart. I expected her to figure it out eventually. Should we be more careful? No, Minho said, still smiling. Let her figure it out. Let her wonder. By the time the council understands what we're doing, it will be too late to stop it. And if they try to stop it? Minho looked out his window at the stars. They won't. Because technically, we're not breaking any rules. The treaty says we can't expand in council space. It says nothing about what we do beyond council space. Yuna smiled. Sometimes I wonder if you planned this from the beginning. Not from the beginning, Minho admitted. But the moment Thexis started drafting his ultimatum, I knew exactly what we could do with it. He wanted us out of council space. We wanted room to grow without constant interference. Everyone gets what they want, as long as they don't look too closely at where we went, Yuna added. As long as they don't look too closely, Minho agreed. The science vessel Stellar Observer had been mapping the outer reaches of council space for 3 years. It was routine work, charting asteroid fields and cataloging cosmic phenomena that most species found boring. The crew of 17 scientists from different species rarely found anything exciting. Until today, Chief Scientist Corvin, a Corvian with bright blue shell plating, stared at his scanner readings in disbelief. That can't be right, he muttered, running the scan again. His assistant, a young Vryn named Suki, looked over his shoulder. What is it? I'm picking up massive energy signatures. Sector 77 Delta, just beyond the map boundary. Corvin adjusted his instruments. It's big. Really big. Could it be a natural phenomenon? A new star forming? No. Corvin's mandibles clicked nervously. The energy signature is too regular. Too controlled. This is artificial. The Stellar Observer changed course, moving toward the strange readings. As they got closer, the sensors showed more details. Refined metals. Fusion reactors. Electromagnetic fields that indicated active construction. And then they saw it. Floating in the void between galaxies was a structure that dwarfed anything the Galactic Council had ever built. It was a shipyard, easily 20 miles long, with dozens of vessels in various stages of construction attached to its framework. Around it, smaller stations processed raw materials. Hundreds of small craft moved between the structures like insects around a hive. Every ship, every station, every craft bore the same markings, human markings. By the void, Suki whispered. How long has this been here? Corvin was already recording everything. Transmit this to Council headquarters immediately. Emergency priority. The message reached Terminus Point within hours. Thexis called an emergency council session, and within the day, every delegate crowded into the main chamber. Watching the recordings from the Stellar Observer, the images spoke for themselves. Humanity had built an empire in the darkness between galaxies. The Vryn Commerce Minister looked at Thexis with an expression that clearly said, I told you so. But she remained silent as the chairman called the session to order. Ambassador Minho, Thexis said, his crystal voice harder than usual. Explain this. Minho walked to the center of the chamber, his datapad in hand, his expression calm and interested as always. He watched the recordings with apparent curiosity, as if seeing them for the first time. Impressive construction, he said. Our engineers have done excellent work. The chamber erupted in angry shouts. Delegates demanded explanations, called for sanctions, threatened military action. Minho waited patiently for the noise to die down. Thexus raised his hand for silence. This is a clear violation of our treaty. You agreed to limit human expansion. No, Minho said gently. We agreed to limit expansion within council space. He pulled up the treaty document on the main screens, highlighting specific passages. Article 7, Section 3. Humanity will restrict all colonial expansion within the boundaries of council-recognized territory. He looked around the chamber. That installation is not in council territory. It's beyond the edge of mapped space in the intergalactic void. The council has never claimed jurisdiction there. That's absurd. The Corvian commander clicked angrily. The spirit of the treaty clearly meant all expansion. The spirit is not legally binding, Minho replied. The letter of the law is what matters. And the letter of the law only restricts us within council space. The Vryn ministers stepped forward. What about the missing colony ships? The disappearing transports? You evacuated your colonies as ordered, then sent those people out here instead of back to Earth. That's deception. The treaty required us to evacuate 12 colonies, Minho said. It specified that those colonies in council space must be abandoned. It said nothing about where the evacuees had to go afterward. We moved them beyond your borders, which is perfectly legal. Dexis's crystalline body flickered with frustration. You knew what we meant. You deliberately misinterpreted our terms. We interpreted them exactly as written, Minho corrected. If the council wanted to restrict human activity beyond council space, that should have been specified in the treaty. It wasn't. Then we specify it now, Thexus declared. As of this moment, humanity is forbidden from expanding beyond council space. Your deep space installations must be dismantled immediately. Minho shook his head slowly. I'm afraid that's not possible, Chairman. The current treaty is binding and cannot be modified without mutual agreement from both parties. If you want to impose new restrictions, we would need to negotiate a new treaty. Then we'll negotiate one right now. Of course, Minho said with his pleasant smile. I'm happy to negotiate. Shall we start with the definition of expansion? I think we should be very precise about what that word means. Does it include resource gathering? Scientific research? How do we define the boundaries of council space? Should we specify a distance or use stellar landmarks? And what about... He continued for 20 minutes, raising question after question, point after point, legal technicality after legal technicality. The other delegates realized quickly that he could keep this up for months. Years. Even the Vryn minister interrupted. You're stalling. I'm ensuring we create a clear, unambiguous treaty, Minho replied. Isn't that what everyone wants? No more misunderstandings? You planned this, she said. From the very beginning. You wanted us to push you out of council space. Minho's smile widened slightly. I wanted humanity to have room to grow without constant territorial disputes. You wanted us out of council space. Our goals aligned perfectly. Thexus slumped in his seat. You used us. We cooperated with you, Minho said. You presented terms. We accepted them. We followed every requirement of that treaty to the letter. If you're unhappy with the results, perhaps you should have been more specific about what you wanted. The Corvian commander stood. Then we'll blockade that installation. Our fleet will prevent you from expanding further. You could try, Minho acknowledged. But that installation is outside council jurisdiction. Any military action against it would be an act of war against a peaceful human settlement in unclaimed territory. Is the Council prepared for that war? The chamber fell silent. They all knew the answer. Humanity had avoided direct conflict not because they feared it, but because conflict was messy and expensive. If the Council forced a war over territory they had no claim to, the other species in the galaxy would see it as aggression, not enforcement. The Vrin minister stepped closer to Minho. How long have you been planning this? Since before the treaty? Much longer, Minho admitted. We saw this coming years ago. Humanity expands quickly. The Council would eventually feel threatened. Rather than wait for you to force us into a war, we engineered a solution that gave you what you wanted while allowing us to do what we needed, by lying to us, by accepting your terms exactly as written. Minho looked around the chamber at all the angry, confused faces. The Council assumed that restriction meant defeat, that compliance meant submission. You thought we would fight your ultimatum or accept permanent limitation. You never considered that we might see your treaty as an opportunity. He pulled up a star chart showing the installation and the vast empty space around it. Out there, beyond your borders, there are billions of rogue planets drifting through the void. There are resources enough for 1,000 civilizations. There's room for humanity to grow for millennia without ever touching Council space again. So you just take it all? Thexus asked. We're not taking anything from you, Minho said. Your species are content with your territories. You have your worlds, your trade routes, your comfortable boundaries. We're not threatening any of that. We're simply growing in a direction you never cared about. The Vrin minister shook her head. In 1,000 years, you'll be everywhere. Your population will dwarf all of ours combined. Probably, Minho agreed. But we'll still be in compliance with the treaty I signed here 6 months ago. And honestly, does it matter? If humanity builds a civilization in the void between galaxies, how does that harm the Council? Your trade continues. Your borders are secure. Your worlds remain yours. Thexus was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. You could have negotiated this openly. You could have asked for permission to expand beyond Council space. Would you have given it? Minho asked. The chairman didn't answer. You would have debated it for years, Minho said. You would have imposed restrictions and oversight. You would have wanted control over something that has nothing to do with you. It was easier to let you think you won. The session ended without resolution. The Council couldn't agree on what to do. Some delegates wanted to renegotiate the treaty. Others wanted military action. A few, like the Vrin minister, recognized that humanity had outmaneuvered them completely, and there was nothing to be done about it. As the chamber emptied, Thexus stopped Minho one last time. Answer me honestly. When I presented you with the ultimatum 6 months ago, did you already know what you would do? Minho considered the question carefully. When you presented the ultimatum, I knew immediately how we could use it. But the foundation for this plan was laid years earlier. We've been preparing for this moment since humanity first left Earth. You manipulated us. 3 weeks after the discovery, Thexus made an announcement that surprised everyone. The Galactic Council would send a delegation to inspect the human deep space installation. Not to shut it down, not to impose restrictions, but simply to see what humanity had built. Minho agreed immediately. He arranged everything personally, offering to provide transportation and full access to all facilities. His eagerness made some delegates suspicious, but Thexus insisted. If humanity was going to build an empire beyond their borders, the Council should at least understand what that empire looked like. The delegation consisted of 5 members. Thexus himself as chairman. The Vrin commerce minister, whose suspicions had been proven correct. The Corvian military commander, who still wanted to find a reason for military action. a Pelton scientist named Oryx who specialized in large-scale construction, and a young Aquarian diplomat named Lyra who had studied human culture. They gathered at Terminus Point's main docking bay, where a human transport ship waited. It was a sleek vessel, larger than a standard transport, but smaller than a military cruiser. The name painted on its hull was Horizon's Edge. A woman in a crisp blue uniform waited at the airlock. She was in her 40s, with short black hair and the confident posture of someone used to command. She saluted as the delegation approached. "Chairman Thexus, delegates, welcome aboard. I'm Captain Hannah. I'll be taking you to Haven Station." "Haven?" the Vryn minister asked. "That's what we call the main installation," Hannah explained as she led them into the ship. Seemed appropriate for a home built in the void. The ship's interior was comfortable but not luxurious. Human efficiency on display. The delegation was shown to a common area with large viewing windows and comfortable seats designed for multiple species. As they departed Terminus Point, Hannah joined them. "The journey will take 3 days. Please let me know if you need anything. We have food suitable for all your species, and the crew is trained in cross-cultural hospitality." The Corvian commander clicked his mandibles. "This ship seems well-equipped for carrying non-humans. Do you transport aliens often?" "Not yet," Hannah admitted. "But we prepared for the possibility. Humanity expects to have many visitors once word spreads about what we're building." During the journey, Hannah was surprisingly open about answering questions. When the Vryn minister asked about the ship itself, Hannah explained that it was a converted colony transport. "This was one of the vessels that evacuated New Sol," she said. "We've retrofitted about 40 of them for various purposes. Some are still transports. Others are mobile research stations. A few are pleasure ships for colonists who want to visit other settlements." "So the ships never went back to Earth," the minister said. "Why would they?" Hannah asked. "We needed them out here. The treaty said we had to evacuate the colonies, not where the evacuation ships had to go afterward." Lyra, the young Aquarian, spoke up. "Where are all the people from those colonies now?" Hannah smiled. "You'll see when we arrive." On the second day, Oryx the scientist asked about the construction techniques. Hannah brought up detailed schematics on a display screen, showing how Haven had been built. "We started with a basic framework constructed from asteroids we mined in deep space," she explained. "The mineral content in rogue asteroids is extremely high. No gravity well to fight, no planetary government to negotiate with. We just take what we need." "How many people worked on this construction?" Oryx asked. "At peak, about 2 million. Most of them were from the evacuated colonies. Engineers, construction workers, fabricators. We brought the expertise with us when we left Council space." The Corvian commander leaned forward. 2 million workers, and the Council never detected them. "You weren't looking," Hannah said simply. "Your sensors cover Council space very well. But out here, you assume anything beyond your borders is empty void." We counted on that assumption. On the third day, they arrived. Even Thexus, who had seen the recordings, was struck silent by the sight of Haven Station hanging in the darkness. The main structure was enormous, a ring of interconnected modules and construction bays that stretched for miles. But around it floated dozens of other structures. Habitat spheres, each one large enough to house tens of thousands of people. Manufacturing plants that processed raw materials from the asteroids. Agricultural stations with massive greenhouses visible through transparent domes. And the ships. Dozens of vessels in various stages of completion, from bare frameworks to nearly finished hulls. By the void, the Vryn minister whispered. "This isn't a station. This is a city." "Several cities, actually," Hannah corrected. "Haven is the central hub, but we have 12 major settlements spread across this sector. Each one specializes in different industries. Over there, she pointed at a cluster of habitats. That's New Harmony. It focuses on agricultural research and food production. And there, that's Frontier Station. They handle mining and resource extraction. The transport docked at one of Haven's main ports. As the delegation disembarked, they found themselves in a massive bay filled with activity. Human workers loaded cargo, repaired ships, and moved equipment. The noise was overwhelming. Machines hummed, metal clanged, and hundreds of voices called out in a dozen different languages. A man in work clothes approached. He was in his 50s, with graying hair and oil stains on his hands. "Captain Hana, good to see you back. These are our guests." Chairman Thexus and his delegation, Hana confirmed. "This is Seok Yin, our chief engineer. He'll give you the technical tour." Seok wiped his hands on a cloth and nodded to the aliens. "Welcome to Haven. Hope you're ready to walk a lot. This place is big." He wasn't joking. The tour took hours. Seok showed them manufacturing facilities where humans built everything from computer chips to ship hulls. He showed them residential areas where families lived in comfortable apartments. Schools where children learned. Medical centers. Recreation areas. Everything a normal city would have, but it was all in space, floating in the void between galaxies. "How many people live here now?" Oryx asked, taking notes frantically. "At Haven specifically?" "About 3 million. Across all our settlements, roughly 40 million total." Seok led them through a greenhouse where plants grew under artificial lights. "We brought everyone from the 12 evacuated colonies, plus volunteers from Earth who wanted to be part of this project." 40 million, Thexus repeated. "In less than a year. We're efficient when we need to be," Seok said. "Plus, we've been planning this for a long time." The infrastructure was mostly prefabricated and just needed assembly. The Corvian commander stopped at a viewing window that looked out at the shipyard. "Those vessels, what are they for?" "Exploration, colonization." Seok joined him at the window. "There are billions of rogue planets out there, drifting through the void. Most are frozen and dark, but they have resources. Minerals, ice, rare elements. We're building ships to find them and harvest what we need. And to move people," the Vryn minister added. "Eventually, yes. Humanity's population on Earth is over 15 billion. We're running out of room." This, Seok gestured at the vast construction around them. "This is our future. Space itself is our territory now. We don't need planets. We can build habitats anywhere." That evening, the delegation was invited to dinner with Haven's leadership. They met in a restaurant with a viewing window that showed the stars. Though they were thin and distant this far from any galaxy, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair joined them. She wore a military uniform with admiral's insignia. "I'm J1, fleet commander for the deep space settlements. I understand you have questions." The Vryn minister got straight to the point. "Why did you really agree to the treaty? You clearly had the capability to resist. You could have fought us." Jiwan considered her answer carefully. "We ran the numbers. Our strategic analysis gave us an 87% probability of military victory if war broke out between humanity and the Council. We would have won." The Corvian commander's shell plates shifted in surprise. "Then why surrender?" "Because war is expensive," Jiwan said. "In lives, resources, and time. Even if we won, we would have lost millions of people. And for what? To keep colonies in Council space that we would have to defend forever? To fight over territory that you claimed first?" She gestured at the window. "Out here, there's no one to fight. No territorial disputes. No ancient claims. Just empty space and resources for everyone." When Thexus presented his ultimatum, our leadership saw an opportunity. He wanted us out of Council space. We wanted to expand without constant conflict. The treaty let us both get what we wanted. You manipulated us, Thexus said quietly. We gave you exactly what you asked for, Jiwan replied. You wrote a treaty that restricted human expansion in Council territory. We agreed to it. You never asked what we would do outside Council territory. That's not manipulation. That's you making assumptions. Lyra, who had been quiet most of the day, finally spoke. What happens in 1,000 years? When humanity is spread across the void, and your population is 100 times larger than all Council species combined. Jiwan smiled. In 1,000 years, the Galactic Council will still have its comfortable territories, its trade routes, its stability. Human settlements in the void won't threaten that. We'll be too busy exploring and building too. 5 years passed. The Galactic Council adapted to the new reality slowly, like a massive ship changing course. At first, there were angry debates and calls for action. Some delegates wanted to tear up the treaty and impose new restrictions. Others wanted to pretend the deep space settlements didn't exist. But gradually, practical considerations won out. The humans in the void were peaceful. They honored all existing agreements. They even opened limited trade with Council species, offering rare minerals harvested from rogue asteroids in exchange for specialized technology. It was good business. And the Council, whatever else it might be, understood business. Minho continued serving as Earth's ambassador to the Council. He attended every major session, participated in committees, and helped draft new trade agreements. To the other delegates, he became a familiar presence. That pleasant young man who smiled and agreed with almost everything. Some of them never quite forgave him for the deception. The Corvian commander still clicked his mandibles irritably whenever Minho spoke. But most had moved on. The universe had more pressing problems than old grudges. Only the Vryn Commerce Minister, who had suspected the truth from the beginning, treated Minho with a kind of wary respect. They sometimes had coffee together between sessions, two professionals who understood each other. How many settlements do you have now? She asked one day, sitting in the station's observation lounge. 27 major installations, Minho replied. About 90 million people total. We're growing steadily. And Earth? Earth is doing well. Population pressure has eased since we opened the void settlements. People can choose where they want to live now. Some prefer planets. Others want to be part of the frontier. He sipped his coffee. It's working out better than we hoped. The minister studied him. Do you ever regret it? The deception? I don't think of it as deception, Minho said. I think of it as creative problem solving. The Council have legitimate concerns. We have legitimate needs. We found a solution that addressed both. By making us think we won. By letting you get what you actually wanted, Minho corrected. You wanted humans out of Council space. We're out. You wanted to limit our expansion in your territory. We've limited it. Everything else is just assumptions you made about what those things meant. The minister was quiet for a moment. My daughter is studying human diplomacy at the academy now. She says you're rewriting all the textbooks. I hope not, Minho said with a slight smile. That makes it sound like we did something new. We just paid attention to what was written instead of what was assumed. On Terminus Point, preparations were underway for a special ceremony. It was the 5-year anniversary of the treaty signing, and Thexus had decided to mark the occasion with a formal commemoration. Every major delegate would attend, along with representatives from all 17 Council species. Some thought it was strange to celebrate a treaty that had turned out so differently than intended. But Thexus insisted. The treaty had, in its own way, accomplished its goal. There was peace. There was stability. And humanity was no longer competing for territory in Council space. that it had also launched humanity into a vast expansion beyond council borders was just an unexpected side effect. The ceremony was held in the main council chamber, the same room where Minho had first accepted the treaty terms 5 years earlier. The room was decorated with holographic displays showing the treaty document and images of both council space and the human deep space settlements. Delegates gave speeches about cooperation and understanding. Trade ministers talked about the successful economic integration. Military commanders reluctantly acknowledged that the treaty had prevented what could have been a devastating war. Finally, it was Minho's turn to speak. He stood in the center of the chamber, the same spot where he had stood 5 years ago. The same delegates watched from their seats, though some faces had changed. Thexus was still there, his crystal body chiming softly as he waited to hear what the human ambassador would say. 5 years ago, Minho began, I stood in this spot and accepted a treaty that many of you thought meant humanity's defeat. You had presented terms that restricted our expansion, limited our military, and placed us under council oversight. And I agreed to everything. He looked around the chamber. Some of you were surprised. Some were suspicious. A few, he nodded at the Vryn minister, were smart enough to wonder what we were really planning. There were a few awkward chuckles. I want to talk about what diplomacy really means, Minho continued. Many people think diplomacy is about winning arguments, about forcing the other side to accept your terms, about dominating the negotiation. He shook his head. But that's not diplomacy. That's just conflict with words instead of weapons. Real diplomacy is about understanding what each side truly needs and finding a way for everyone to get it. Minho pulled up an image of Haven Station on the main displays. When Chairman Thexus presented his ultimatum 5 years ago, he believed he was offering us a choice between submission and isolation. But what he was really offering was an opportunity. The Council wanted humans out of your space. You wanted to end territorial disputes. You wanted peace and stability in your territories. Those were your real needs, even if you framed them as demands. He changed the image to show a star map with council space highlighted. And what did humanity need? Room to grow. Freedom to expand without constant conflict. The ability to develop our civilization without fighting over every planet and asteroid. The treaty gave us both what we needed. You got peaceful borders and reduced competition for resources. We got access to infinite space beyond your jurisdiction. Everyone won. The Corvian commander stood. But you deceived us. You made us think you were surrendering when you were actually planning to expand even more. Did I? Minho asked calmly. I told you I accepted your terms. I never said I was surrendering. I never said humanity would stop growing. I simply agreed to the specific restrictions you outlined. You assumed that restriction meant defeat. That was your interpretation, not my deception. He looked at each delegate in turn. True diplomacy isn't about winning or losing. It's about understanding what the other side assumes they want versus what they actually need. 5 years ago, the Council assumed they wanted to see humanity humbled and contained. But what you actually needed was security for your own territories and an end to competition in Council space. We gave you exactly what you needed. And in the process, we took exactly what we needed. That's not deception. That's successful negotiation. Thexus stood slowly. And if we had understood what you were planning, if we had written the treaty to prevent expansion beyond Council space as well, Minho smiled. Then we would have negotiated. Probably for years. And in the end, we would have reached some compromise that let humanity expand while protecting Council interests. But it would have taken much longer, cost much more in time and resources, and created far more resentment on both sides. This way was cleaner, faster, better for everyone. The chamber was quiet. Finally, Lyra the Aquarian spoke up. You said you gave us what we needed instead of what we thought we wanted. What's the difference? You thought you wanted humanity limited and controlled, Minho explained. You thought you wanted us reduced to a minor player in galactic affairs. But what you actually needed was for us to stop competing for the same limited resources in council space. Once we moved our expansion beyond your borders, your actual needs were met. And our pride? The Corvian commander asked. Pride is expensive, Minho said. It costs lives, resources, and opportunities. The council could have insisted on a treaty that humbled humanity, that made us submit completely. But that would have required enforcement, resentment, eventual rebellion. By accepting terms that let us leave with dignity, you avoided all of that cost. The Vryn minister stood. I have a question. Did you plan this from the very beginning? Even before the council started drafting the ultimatum? Minho considered his answer carefully. Humanity has been planning for our expansion into deep space for decades. We knew we would eventually need more room than planets could provide. We knew the Council would eventually see our growth as a threat. So yes, we had contingency plans. But the specific plan to use your treaty as a path to the void, that came together when I read the first draft of Vexus's ultimatum. I saw immediately how we could accept it, comply with it, and still achieve our goals. The Council had written the perfect document for what we needed. You just didn't realize it. Vexus chimed softly. You could have simply asked permission to expand beyond our borders. Would you have granted it? Minho asked. The chairman was silent. You would have debated for years, Minho said gently. You would have demanded oversight, restrictions, regular inspections. You would have tried to control something that had nothing to do with your security or interests, simply because you believe you should have authority over it. It was easier to let you force us out, then do what we needed beyond your reach. The ceremony ended with no grand conclusions or dramatic reconciliations. The delegates simply acknowledged what everyone already knew. The treaty had accomplished its goals, just not in the way anyone expected. Humanity was out of council space. Council territories were secure. There was peace.